Hi, everyone, citizens. So I'm going to go, I've been asked to provide a review, an overview of how we got here, the groundwater seepage history, some of the work we've done, and where we are right now. So you can go to the next slide. So overview, we're going to just talk about the overview, previous activities that we've done, and the current status, which is some new work around the City Hall area, and what we're calling a results package right now, so what all the data would be used for and how that would be utilized for funding and whatever we need it for. Next slide. So the groundwater seeps. So this is Malaga Lane, west of Villa Corta and east of Villa Corta. I'm sorry, Villa Chico, that's wrong. That's Malaga Lane. So water just constantly coming out from these groundwater seeps. On the right, that is going down that driveway. I think that's mitigated right now with some hosing. So these are where the seep's coming from. Water just constantly coming out during years of high rain. More and more comes out. There's still water coming out right now. Next slide. So these are indoor seeps. I removed the locations of these, but these are right here in Malaga Lane because these are personal properties. So these are seeps underneath the ground that just keep occurring, been occurring for many, many years. So next slide. So one of our first things we did was a desktop groundwater study. We reviewed all this historical document, did some field reconnaissance, and came up with a conceptual model. So next slide. So in that desktop study, we reviewed a lot of historical information. Here's a aerial photo from 1927, which is pretty good. You usually didn't go back that far. This is discussed in the report that we submitted in July, I think. Next slide. Another aerial view from 1940 as the plaza is being built. You can see the drainages and where the water is gathered from the surface water infiltrated into the ground. So next slide, please. Also, as part of this study, we evaluated the watershed. Basically, how much water would fall. So a watershed is basically a bowl, right? So you have the water that falls on in the bowl and it all drains to the middle. So here, this blue is your watershed. So we have all the rain that falls in the watershed and it drains to a certain point. One of the main things we found out from this is that your watershed times the amount of precipitation provides volume of water. And that volume of water that falls on the watershed is much, much less than the seeping out. So even if we counted for all the rain, no infiltration, you have water seeping out at a much faster rate. So there's water, so the data gap there was that there's water coming from another source, upwelling, seawater intrusion, who knows. So as part of that, the data gaps, we provided recommendations for a geophysical survey study. So next slide, please. Yeah, these are basically the same things I said. So we recommended a geophysical survey. So this is a high-resolution survey just to look at the subsurface. So next slide. So these are the transects we evaluated. This is on Via Campesina and Via Chico. Next slide, please. And again, this is all discussed further. This was presented to the board before, the council before, and reported in our previous report. So what we found from the geophysical survey is a fault block in many conduits for water just based on the geology coming up. So you can go to the next slide. So again, this is in detail, pretty detailed, pretty into the weeds with the data, but we found hints of, we interpreted water coming out from a deeper source, and some of that could be high TDS water. There's showing signs of signature of salt water. So next slide, please. So this is just the data that we get from that for engineering purposes. So next slide. So after we did the hydrogeology study, we did the first geophysical study. I came in and talked to the council, and one of the recommendations is to further evaluate right here at City Hall, and to also collect seep samples from the laboratory samples from all the seeps. So this is where we presented this in July and provided a proposal, and this is where we are right now with our work. So a geophysical study survey at the City Hall and seep sampling. So next slide, please. So these are the transects that we did right here on Tejon Place and Villa Corta. Next slide, please. Here's the results of along Tahone Place. So the blue is where water is traveling, and the green and the red is where water is not moving. So water is moving up these conduits for that transmit water more, and that's where we're seeing the seeps throughout the area. So next slide. So another interpretation of the geophysical results. Again, we're seeing water upwelling from the subsurface. Next slide. These are just depths and elevations. This is what we get. That's what's needed for engineering design. So next slide. So then part of this also was to collect laboratory samples, samples for laboratory analysis from all the seeps. So we did that on March 25th, collected samples from many of the places in the pictures shown in the first couple slides. And those samples were submitted to the laboratory, and we're waiting for results right now. So what's key about these is that we'll collect water samples and compare the geochemical signature to state water project water or even seawater. So we can see if it's comparable to state water project water, which is provided by Cal-Am. So if there's a signature of state water project water, then we know there might be some sort of leak from a Cal-Am. Or if there's seawater, we can tell if there's seawater intrusion, and that has to do with treatment and discharge later on. Next slide, please. So with all that, the design studies, the depths, the elevations, the laboratory analysis, we would come up with a results package that would be used for engineering design to mitigate against the groundwater seeps. So along Via Campesina, Tahone Place, via Chico, and could be subdrains, could be horizontal wells. We don't know right now. So next slide, please. So these are just ballpark cost estimates for what we see would be the mitigation costs after all the data is collected. Engineering design, and then engineering construction would be quite a bit later on. So maybe funding opportunities there. So next slide. So these are just some mitigation options that were left over. I won't go into detail on these. Next slide. Just some elements of engineering design, engineer's cost estimate, just a few bullet points on things that we would need to consider and analyze as part of the engineering design. So, next slide. Same thing, next slide. And yeah, so the engineering design, all the data would be needed for some sort of funding opportunity with Bureau of Reclamation, Cal Water Resources, many types of funding out there. But you would need the design package to go in and request funding. So next slide. So that's it. Just wanted to give an update. So we should have seep sampling results soon, and a final report presenting everything on the data that could be used for engineering design in about a month. So we'd be back here in a month just presenting the results of everything. That includes the City Hall geophysical and the seep sampling.
That's funny. Look at that.
That's all I have.